Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to this midweek review with Mr. John. I am Mr. John, and we have been talking about Jesus and kind of the first of his ministry. We talked about when Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist, the whole announcement by God that this is my son who I am so pleased, and then Jesus going into the desert and into the wilderness, and Satan tempting him and him refusing that. And last week we saw kind of an odd lesson about how the people in his hometown kind of couldn't see Jesus for who he was. Well, today we're going to start talking about some of the really cool, fascinating, great things that Jesus did that we call miracles. Well, Jesus, his first miracle was amazing, but it's kind of a funny story, really. Jesus is invited to a wedding, and this wedding must have been hopping. I'm sure you guys have probably been to a wedding, and everything goes out. They have the ceremony, and then afterward, they have kind of what we call a reception. It's kind of the party, right? Where everybody goes around. That's where you eat. That's where you have your sodas and your drinks and your lemonade and all that stuff to drink. And then there's dancing and all that. Well, Jesus and them are at the reception. The wedding is happening, and they're at the reception. And so they're going around and they're serving wine to everybody, and they run out. The wedding must have been just a happening wedding, just a very popular couple or something, because there was so many people that they ran out of wine. So they're looking around, they're trying to figure out what to do, and so they go up to Jesus and they ask him and say, hey, is there anything you can do about this? And Jesus's mom is like, okay, Mary is like going, Jesus, come on, you can do something about this, okay? And Jesus does something tells Mary, says, listen, it's not my time. I'm not supposed to reveal this stuff yet. I'm just not supposed to. And so Mary kind of tells Jesus to go ahead and do it. And Jesus just goes, okay, we will do this. And he tells the maitre d' or the servers, whoever he told, he says, hey, listen, go grab 6 clay jars. And when we talk about jars, they're big, like big jugs, like you would if you were at a soccer game. Think about the water cooler. These are big water cooler type things. They're just jars. And so he says, go fill them full of water. And so when they fill them full of water, they fill these 6 jars to the top, to the brim. And he comes out, and Jesus turns that water into wine. And so they start giving it out. Well, one of the servers, like the maitre d', the main guy, the guy who, like the wedding planner, right? He sits there and he goes up and he sees that everybody's having a good time, and he takes a bit of the wine and he tastes it, right? And he is just kind of dumbfounded a little bit, because he says, listen, it is very odd to give the best wine last. And I'll tell you why he's saying that. At most weddings, you go in and they give out the best stuff first, right? They give out the best of the food. And if that gets eaten or the stuff gets drank, it's kind of almost like a desperation time. They break out the stuff that's not as popular, but because you still want a little something, it's there. And nobody really complains about that stuff because they had the really good stuff first. And what Jesus did is he turned this wine into something spectacular. And what it shows is that nothing that Jesus does is halfway. Nothing that Jesus does is not great. Nothing that Jesus does is not the best. Does that make sense? He creates something. Everything he does is spectacular. It's the best, and it's the best for us. And so Jesus in this moment shows, and this is, it doesn't, this is a big miracle to us because none of us can really turn water into wine or water into a Coca-Cola unless we have something else. And that's part of this miracle, part of the creation of things, right? Jesus is taking something and turning it into something totally different without like I can take food coloring and I can drop it into the water, turn it red and go, that's wine, but it's not. It's still water with food coloring. Or I have to put something in it to turn it into something. Jesus didn't do that. He turned the water directly into wine by just speaking it. And we lose track of this miracle, really, because of what Jesus comes to do. And we'll talk about some of those really fascinating miracles coming. But this seems like a very small thing just to turn water into wine, but it's really a huge thing to show that God and Jesus is God, and he is he's able to create things out of nothing. Right? Even though the water's there, he still creates wine out of nothing. He turns this water into wine, and that is just something spectacular that we just can't fathom, that we can't do that, right? And so when we see this, Jesus was humble enough to say, listen, it's not my time. My time is coming, but this is just not it. But he also shows great grace and love to his mom and to the people of the party by going ahead and turning the water into wine in this. And that shows Jesus' love and compassion for the people to do the things that he's doing for us. And so I just love this story. And we're going to continue this month talking about some of the big time miracles that Jesus performs. And it's amazing how his miracles just keep getting bigger and better as we go on. So remember, this one seems like a small miracle, but it's a big miracle. It's the first. And we just got to remember that. Hey, we're going to be back next week. Verse is coming up. It's a new one. Keep your eyes on it. Learn it. Put it in your heart. We'll talk to you later. Bye. You are the God who performs miracles. You display your power among the people. Psalm 77:14.